God will fight you. Except I'm not God. Rest where, mommy. Rest where. Rest where. I don't know whether they will allow us to roof you. Maybe I will roof it. My brothers. Your uncle stood by you. They all love you. They love you, baby. This is your home. And this is the home of everybody on the earth. There is no
Augusta
single person that will
Osedian's
not
future should have been about saving lives. Instead, her own was stolen in one of Nigeria's most shocking intimate partner murders by a boyfriend who admitted everything, then vanished. At just 21, Augusta was a force of nature, a brilliant medical student with a near-perfect academic record, a rising social media influencer with a vibrant online presence, and a beloved daughter with a future so bright it felt limitless. Yet, that vibrant life was hiding a dark and dangerous secret. For 3 years, Augusta was in a relationship with a man named Benjamin, who was known online as Killboy. To the world, their romance may have looked ordinary, but behind closed doors, it was anything but. It was a volatile, tumultuous partnership, filled with sharp conflicts and escalating arguments. Then, the final argument came. A heated fight that would end with Augusta's lifeless body left in a locked apartment, brutally murdered by the man she had trusted. Her death was not just a personal tragedy. It was a national crisis that exposed the horrific reality of intimate partner violence. This isn't just a story about a brilliant young woman's death. It's a haunting question. What happens when the person you're supposed to be safest with becomes the one you should fear the most? This is the story of a confessed killer who used social media to mock justice, a desperate mother's relentless search, and a manhunt that spanned borders. It is a story that forces us to look closer at the warning signs we often ignore and asks if, with just one word, a life could have been saved. Have you ever noticed red flags in a friend's relationship and wished you'd acted on them sooner? Could saying something, anything, have saved a life? Because, as you're about to hear, Augusta's murder was not just a single moment of violence. It was the devastating end to a chain of events that remind us just how fragile trust can be, and how easily love can turn into a weapon. Welcome to Dark Trace Crime Stories. I'm glad you're here with me today. If this is your first time joining us, kindly subscribe to Dark Trace Crime Stories so you don't miss our next case. And for our returning viewers, a quick like on this video would go a long way in helping us share this story. Before her name became a headline and her story a national tragedy, Augusta Osedian was a force of nature, a young woman navigating two distinct worlds with equal grace. She was born into a loving, close-knit family, where she was raised with the kind of high expectations that often inspire greatness. Her mother, Cordelia, often spoke of her with a profound pride, calling her a go-getter. It was a term that perfectly captured Augusta's spirit, her relentless drive, her unwavering focus, and her refusal to settle for anything less than her full potential. At just 21, Augusta's ambition was already yielding incredible results. She was a dedicated student at Lled City University in Ibadan, immersing herself in the demanding field of medical laboratory science. To her professors and peers, she was a quiet academic powerhouse. Her discipline was absolute, a fact evident in her near-perfect 4.76 CGPA. She was on a clear, unshakable path to graduating with honors, a future medical professional with the world at her feet. She was building a legacy of excellence, one class, one exam, and one achievement at a time. But Augusta's brilliance wasn't confined to the four walls of a university classroom. She belonged to a new generation of Nigerians who were proving that ambition could be multifaceted. She was a rising star in her own right, a lifestyle content creator and model with a respectable following on Instagram. Her feed was a vibrant tapestry of her life, showcasing her impeccable fashion sense, her bright personality, and her creative eye. She expertly balanced her academic life with her online hustle, representing a new dream where the classroom and the digital stage could coexist. She had no children, no public controversies, and by every public measure, she was a young woman with a purpose-driven life. It was in this period of her life that Augusta's personal world intersected with Benjamin Best Nanyarugo, a man who would forever change the trajectory of her story. Known on social media as Killaboy, Benjamin cultivated a public image that was the stark opposite of Augusta's. He was a prominent figure in Lagos nightlife and online spaces, often flaunting his wealth and cultivating the persona of a big boy. While Augusta was building her legacy through quiet dedication, Benjamin was building his through loud displays and notoriety. Their relationship reportedly spanned 3 years and was, from the very beginning, a study in contrasts. It was described by those who knew them as intense but deeply tumultuous. Initially, there was a quiet affection, a shared presence that, from a distance, could be mistaken for an ordinary romance. They were two young people navigating their relationship, their lives, and the world in which they had to live. But behind the filters and the curated posts that depicted a seemingly happy couple, a darker dynamic was taking hold. The first signs of trouble were subtle. Then they grew sharper. Arguments that were once minor conflicts escalated into volatile disputes. The background story makes it clear that a growing strain was taking hold, a silent tension that worried those closest to Augusta. This was not a healthy relationship that simply ended. It was a connection that was gradually corroding from the inside out. The private struggles of the relationship, the arguments that became more frequent, the anger that became more palpable, were hidden from the public. Augusta, ever the protector of her own image and life, shielded these painful dynamics from her followers and her public self. She was a young woman trying to find her place in the world, and like many in her situation, she chose to push on, believing they could overcome their problems. But as the days passed, the strain became too much to bear. The public facade of their romance was stretched thin by the private reality of their conflicts. The relationship that began with a glimmer of affection was steadily devolving into a source of constant worry and emotional distress. It was this growing volatility, this hidden darkness, that set the stage for the unthinkable. The stage was now set not for a celebratory graduation or a career milestone, but for a final, tragic act that would erase her bright promise and shock a nation. The final, fatal chapter of Augusta's life began to write itself not with a public event, but with the quiet, chilling ring of a phone on July 11th, 2023. It was a call that would forever be etched into her mother's memory. The voice on the other end was Augusta's, but the tone was all wrong. It was a voice filled with a distress that was raw and unfiltered, a sound that instantly sent a jolt of anxiety through her mother, Anuab Cordelia. Augusta reported a serious and terrifying argument with Benjamin, a quarrel so intense that it had left her shaken. The specific details of the dispute remained a private matter between mother and daughter, but what mattered most was the emotion behind her words. For a mother so closely connected to her child, that sound was a warning, a primal signal that something was terribly, fundamentally wrong. In that moment, Cordelia did what any loving mother would do. She listened with a heavy heart, offering what counsel she could, urging her daughter to find a way to make peace, or, if necessary, to simply walk away and find a safe space. But no clear resolution was reached, and the conversation ended with an unsettling sense of unresolved tension, a lingering question mark that hung heavy in the air. In the hours and days that followed, a terrifying silence descended. Augusta's phone stopped ringing. Messages went unanswered. The digital echo that had once been a constant, comforting presence in her mother's life, the quick replies, the daily updates, the shared photos, suddenly went quiet. For Cordelia, this silence was not just a lack of communication. It was a physical weight, a growing dread that settled in her stomach and refused to leave. The phone in her hand became an object of torment. Every time it vibrated, a new wave of hope would surge through her, only to be crushed when she saw it was a text from someone else, a notification for a different app. She would try to call, letting it ring again and again, each unanswered ring a new, sharp punch to the gut. The hours stretched into days, and the silence became deafening. She tried reaching out to Benjamin as well, but his line was also unresponsive. A mother's intuition, a primal knowledge that something is amiss with her child, was now screaming at her. She reached out to Augusta's roommate, hoping to find her, hoping to hear that she was just busy or had forgotten her phone, but learned little. There was no explanation, no reassurance, just more silence, a black hole of uncertainty that threatened to consume her. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Cordelia's desperation reached its breaking point. Driven by a love so fierce it could not be contained, she made the gut-wrenching decision to act on her own. She began the journey to Benjamin's apartment at Oral Estate, Ikota, in the Aja area of Lagos. The drive was a silent ordeal. Her mind raced with 1,000 possibilities, a frantic scramble to explain the unexplainable. Maybe they had reconciled and turned off their phones. Maybe they had gone away. Maybe she was simply overthinking it. A small, persistent flicker of hope fought against the mounting dread, but it was a losing battle. As she approached the building, her heart sank. There, parked outside the locked apartment, sat her daughter's Mercedes-Benz C-Class. It was unmoving and empty. Augusta's car was right there, a symbol of her independence and success, but Augusta was not. It was a sight that instantly extinguished the last flicker of hope. She called out, her voice echoing in the quiet estate, but there was no reply. She knocked on the door again and again, her fists pounding a rhythm of desperation, but still nothing. With every passing second, the feeling of dread tightened around her chest, suffocating all doubt. Her fear had now turned into certainty. She knew, with a chilling, bone-deep finality, that something terrible had happened inside that locked apartment. Driven by a desperation born of a mother's love, Cordelia immediately alerted the police. On July 15, 2023, 4 days after that final call, detectives arrived at the apartment. With no response from inside, they were forced to break down the door. The moment they entered, they were met with a sight of unspeakable horror. The air inside was thick with a reek of death, the scent of a life brutally cut short. Augusta's lifeless body lay on the floor, a tragic figure in a space that should have been safe. The advanced state of decomposition was a horrifying testament to the time that had passed since her life had been so violently taken, likely soon after her final call to her mother. The scene bore the horrific marks of a brutal struggle. Reports from local media described multiple stab wounds, a final, horrifying testament to the brutality of her killing. Allegations of mutilation were whispered in some reports, though official statements from the police focused on fatal stabbing as the official cause of death. Beside her body, a note was found, believed to have been left by Benjamin, a final, cold message that only added to the horror. The crime scene was immediately cordoned off, and her body was taken to the General Hospital mortuary in Yaba for preservation and autopsy. For Cordelia, the confirmation was devastating. Her only daughter, her brilliant star, was gone. The bright promise of Augusta's life had been extinguished, not by a distant illness or a random accident, but by a close and intimate act of violence. The horror of the scene was a brutal punctuation mark at the end of a life that was supposed to be filled with so much more. This story makes you wonder, why do people stay in relationships that show clear signs of toxicity? What do you think is the biggest misconception about intimate partner violence? The tragedy of Augusta's murder was already a difficult reality for a nation to process. But the story took a stunning and bizarre turn when her confessed killer broke his silence from a place of hiding. Benjamin Best Nanyarugo, the man known as Killaboy, chose not to address the authorities or Augusta's family directly. Instead, he posted a series of confessions on his Instagram stories, turning a moment of private horror into a public spectacle. In a digital performance that was as chilling as it was brazen, he admitted to the unthinkable. He claimed he had stabbed Augusta during a heated argument, a desperate lashing out in a moment of emotional chaos. His words were a sickening attempt to reframe a brutal, fatal act as a moment of unfortunate passion, a tragic accident born of betrayal and conflict. He even tried to portray himself as a victim, a man devastated by the consequences of his own actions. To the shock and revulsion of a nation, his confession ended with a hollow promise. He was ready to face the consequences, and he would turn himself in. But those words were nothing more than a smokescreen for a man on the run. The public display of remorse was an empty gesture, a calculated act for an online audience. Instead of surrendering to the police as he had promised, Benjamin fled. His Instagram confession, meant to project sorrow, instead became a testament to his cowardice and his profound disrespect for both Augusta and the rule of law. It was an act that only deepened the outrage and revulsion felt across Nigeria. The crime itself was horrific, but the killer's brazen attempt to control the narrative of his actions from a place of anonymity was almost as sickening. It was a digital ghost haunting the lives of a grieving family and a shocked nation. As the weeks turned into months, Benjamin remained at large, a fugitive from justice. The public pressure mounted with each passing day he remained free. The Lagos State Police Command officially declared him wanted, releasing his photo and details to the public. Social media became an impromptu war room for justice. Nigerians across the country shared his photo, posted impassioned pleas, and tagged police officials, refusing to let Augusta's case fade into obscurity. This wasn't just about one murder. It was about the profound injustice of a confessed killer still walking free, openly defying the law. For Augusta's mother, Cordelia, the fight was personal and tireless. She had single-handedly pushed for accountability, relentlessly tracking leads and urging authorities to act. She refused to let her daughter's memory be disrespected by her killer's freedom. Her voice became the voice of countless others, demanding that justice be served. Then, after months of painstaking investigation and international cooperation, there was a breakthrough. The search for Benjamin finally led to Sierra Leone, a country far from the scene of his crime. He was reportedly arrested in mid-October at a nightclub in Freetown, allegedly living under a false identity and even carrying a Sierra Leonean passport. For Augusta's family, and for a nation that had watched this case unfold with bated breath, his apprehension was a moment of bittersweet relief. It felt as though, after months of pain and uncertainty, justice was finally within reach. It was a victory hard won, a testament to Cordelia's persistence and the collective pressure of a grieving nation. The news was met with a sigh of relief. It appeared the final chapter of this tragic story was about to be written. But as with every step of this case, nothing was simple. The final, shocking complication was yet to come. Just as the extradition proceedings were set to begin, reports began to emerge in early 2025 that Benjamin had managed to escape custody in Sierra Leone. The news sent a fresh wave of outrage across Nigeria, leaving many stunned and confused. The man who had confessed to a brutal murder, who had been found and apprehended thousands of miles away, had slipped through the fingers of the justice system yet again. For Augusta's mother, it was another cruel, devastating twist in a case that had already delivered so much pain. For women's rights activists, it was more than just a failure of a specific case. It was proof of a systemic breakdown, a failure not just to protect victims of intimate partner violence, but to secure justice even after the fact. Augusta's death was a personal tragedy of the highest order, the brutal end of a young woman's life filled with boundless potential. But as her story was told, shared, and debated across Nigeria, it became clear that her murder was not an isolated incident. Instead, it was a painful symptom of a much larger, more systemic problem, the rising crisis of femicide in Nigeria. Her case exposed the fragile gaps in a system that often fails to protect women from intimate partner violence and struggles to deliver justice even after the fact. Her story, therefore, is not just about the horror of a crime, but a crucial lesson for a nation. The first painful lesson is about the early warning signs. Augusta's last distress call to her mother was a final, tragic signal that the relationship had become dangerous. Her story is a harrowing reminder that signs of escalating violence, control, or isolation are not to be dismissed. Family and friends, as Augusta's mother proved, can be the last and most critical line of defense. The persistence of Cordelia ensured that her daughter's case was pursued, her body was found, and the killer was identified. Her relentless pursuit of justice highlights the vital role of loved ones as a safety net when a victim may be too afraid or unable to act. Furthermore, Augusta's murder highlighted the critical importance of documentation and safety planning. While no one can ever truly be prepared for such an act of violence, documenting abuse, whether through screenshots of threats, chat histories, or keeping loved ones informed, can be a crucial step in building a case and strengthening a victim's position if violence escalates. Finally, Augusta's case became a powerful indictment of a nation's legal and social systems. The failure to prevent her death, the spectacle of a confessed killer remaining free, and his eventual escape from custody exposed the deep, systemic gaps. Nigeria, like many countries, lacks a specific femicide law, a deficiency that makes it difficult to track cases and enforce penalties tailored to gender-based killings. Her story is now a rallying cry for activists demanding stronger laws, improved police response times, and better cross-border cooperation to ensure that confessed killers do not escape justice. It is a powerful call to action for a society to reject cultures that excuse violence against women and to teach conflict resolution, respect, and equality from an early age. Augusta Osedian's story is a profound and painful reminder that the most tragic events often begin quietly, behind closed doors. She was a brilliant student, a rising influencer, and a beloved daughter, a young woman whose life was full of boundless potential. But a relationship that was meant to be a source of happiness became her undoing, a hidden world of escalating conflict that ultimately ended her bright promise. Her story is a testament to the fragile line between public perception and private reality, and a harrowing example of how easily love can turn into a weapon. The injustice of her case, from the brazen online confession to the eventual escape of her killer, forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the world we live in. It shows us that courage is not just about standing up to a killer, but about a mother's relentless pursuit of justice, a refusal to let her daughter's memory be forgotten. Augusta's mother, Cordelia, fought tirelessly, ensuring that even in death, her daughter's case would not be silenced. Her fight reminds us that the responsibility to protect victims of violence and to demand accountability is a shared one. This is a story that delivers painful but necessary lessons. It is a cautionary tale about the importance of heeding early warning signs and the vital role of family and friends as a safety net. It is a powerful call for stronger institutions and legal frameworks that can protect women and ensure that those who commit such heinous acts are brought to justice. Augusta's name should be remembered for her brilliance, not for the way she died. Her story serves as a painful reminder that silence is a weapon of the abuser. Let me know in the comments below what you think needs to change to protect women in Nigeria and beyond. And if you're new here, be sure to like this video and subscribe to Dark Trace Crime Stories for more untold tales.